25 minutes before 10 o'clock. Beautiful Friday morning, and that music and the fact that it's Friday means it's ready to talk about horses. This show is called Horse Sense. It's provided by the Equine Alliance of Marion County, and we have today in the studio Barbara Feitos, as well as Brock Sheridan. Brock is the editor-in-chief of Florida Equine Publications, and Dave Allen is here. He's the associate editor of Florida Equine Publications. So good morning to Barbara, of course, and Brock and Dave. All three of you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Larry.
How you doing?
So I brought the heavy hitters with me this morning.
You brought the heavy hitters,
Yes.
and was it a good Kentucky Derby? How was it? Were you crying? Were you happy? Was it?
I think it was a great Kentucky Derby. I think that California Chrome could be something special. I think he's got a really good shot at the Triple Crown. The interesting part of this Derby is that it was a slow Derby. A lot of the speed figures really didn't measure up to previous derbies, but towards the end of the race, I think the winning jockey, Victor Espinoza, seemed to throttle him down a little bit, and so he really wasn't going all out at the end of the race. But I think he's going to be a very difficult horse to beat, at least in the Preakness.
Does his name mislead us to thinking he was raised in California, or was he?
No, he's a California bred.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
he was born and raised in California, and he's not by a very fashionable stallion, but we did have lots of representation in the Kentucky Derby with our Florida breds. We had Dance with Fate, and
which is the horse that the mayor was betting on when he had a little wager going with the Louisville Louisville mare. Yeah.
Right. And the two Florida breds really didn't do so well. They kind of ran into each other. They came out of the gate and they bumped into each other, and then they both had pretty severe problems in terms of traffic throughout the race. And we were just talking, Wildcat Red, he had traffic problems on the way home. He got stuck in a traffic jam and got stuck on the interstate trying to get back down to Gulfstream. So he was on the interstate for 7 hours. So it was bad traffic for him before, during, and after the race.
But horses don't lay down, right? So if you're in a trailer and you're a horse, you're standing. I'm guessing. I mean, what's it like? Is there any stress related to traveling for the horse itself?
I think in a situation like that, the reports were that it was hot that day, and that they pulled him out of the trailer and put some water on him to make sure that he's comfortable.
Oh, okay.
But in general, no, horses don't really stress out a whole lot when they travel. The interesting part about traveling horses is when they fly them, and you can see Tex Sutton's jet fly in and out of Ocala International Airport quite often. And
right.
The horses love that. I mean, they generally don't put any type of tranquilizers or use any kind of tranquilizers.
That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, the horses just
like a dog getting into a car, right?
Yeah, they just hop in those planes and they just seem to love it.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Do you know, because we do a radio show, we have a lot of geeky information, so I have one little tidbit of geeky information for you today. On this date in history, 1945, the wartime government ban on horse racing was lifted.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
I don't understand. Maybe you, and kind of why I brought it up is, do you know why? I mean, why would they be a ban during the war that you couldn't have gambling on horse racing?
I know that I don't think they ever shut down the Kentucky Derby. I think the Kentucky Derby ran continuously through the war ban. There were lots of tracks that shut down. Interestingly, the tracks in Southern California, Hollywood, and I believe Santa Anita were both internment camps during World War II.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. That might have explained everything.
That explained some of it out in California. I know in other states where they did shut it down because of the war. And I'm not really sure what the thinking was behind that, but I know that's my wartime.
The only thing that I could think of is that, it was such a popular sport at that time that, on any given afternoon, you could have 20 to 30,000 people coming out. And so they were looking at it from the standpoint of, at that point they had rationing on gasoline and just about everything. So they were probably looking at it and say, look, we don't want people spending their ration stamps on going to the track. We want them to only use it as much as they have to.
In NASCAR, they say that the Super Bowl of NASCAR is the Daytona 500, right? Mm-hmm. You know what they say?
Yeah.
And that's like the first race.
Right.
But the Kentucky Derby is the same way, right? Isn't that the big one, but it's first?
Well, it's not actually the first race of the year. There's lots of preliminary races like the Florida Derby and the Tampa Bay Derby and the Santa Anita Derby that lead up to the Kentucky Derby. But in terms of really national attention, it is the first big race that gets on, a national television audience. And I think this year the crowd was a record crowd of 165,000 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a big deal. But yeah, it is a lot like the Daytona 500 in that the Kentucky Derby is it's our biggest race of the year, and it is the first of the Triple Crown and early in the year.
And the next one is the Preakness?
Correct.
And when is that?
The Preakness is it's the second Saturday in May, so it'll be a week from tomorrow, and it's in Baltimore at Pimlico Racecourse, and this will be, I think, the 139th running of the Preakness. And it is a little bit shorter. It's 1 mile and 3/16, so it's a 16th of a mile shorter than the Kentucky Derby. So that adds a little bit of intrigue to the race. And then after that, 3 weeks after that, they'll go to Belmont for the Belmont Stakes, and it's 1.5 miles. That's the Test of Champions.
Oh, wow. Well, we do have the phone lines ringing. Barbara, do you want to take phone calls?
Sure we can.
Okay, let me make sure that if you want to call, you know the number. The number is 622-WOCA. That's the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline, 622-9622. You should be able to hear through your headphones. Good morning. You're on the air. Thank you for calling.
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
If next year I wanted to go to the Kentucky Derby, would I have problems getting tickets? Are they hard to get? And can you give me an idea what the price range would be like?
I know that it's not hard to get to the Kentucky Derby as long as you make your plans a couple of months ahead of time. The sooner that you make your plans, the better, because the lodging there in Louisville becomes very expensive. If you don't want to be at the track in the morning, you might want to stay, just outside of Louisville, maybe in Lexington or some of the surrounding areas. But getting into the Derby is not very difficult. But depending on where you want to sit, some seats can cost thousands of dollars, and other seats are just maybe a couple of hundred.
Yeah. Hey, a real quick question: Is that the only race that's held there at the Kentucky Derby? That race?
No, there's they have on that particular day, I think they had 12 races that day, and then they run a couple of different meets. I think they run generally, they start out the week before the Kentucky Derby, and then they'll go about the middle of July, I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and then they run a short winter meet, too, in the middle of the winter, where they'll run, and they run 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week, and, on average, probably 10, 11 races a day.
All right.
Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So when we were looking at the results after the Kentucky Derby, it looked like you actually would have made more money if you bet on the number 2 horse.
Yeah, he was a long shot. Commanding Curve. He was a horse that actually drew into the race late. They qualify for the race by earning points in some of the other races that I was talking about, the Santa Anita Derby and the Florida Derby, and those races, they earn points to qualify for the Derby. And Commanding Curve was number 21 on the field of 20 going into the final days before the race, and he drew into the race. Horses scratched out and got injured, and he got in. So I always take a look at those horses. I always take a close look at those horses that draw into the race late like that.
Why don't we have horse racing in Ocala or in Marion County anyway? And maybe part 2 is, will we one day?
I hope that we have a legitimate racetrack in Marion County at some point. I don't know exactly the history of why we've never really had one before, but I think that there have been discussions on putting a legitimate racetrack here in Marion County. It is the horse capital of the world.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And I know that there have been some people that are very prominent in the sport of horse racing in terms of owning racetracks and building racetracks that have had an interest recently in coming into Ocala.
And there are, we learned last week, I think, on the show that if you were to look at Google Maps or just fly over, you'd see how many tracks, training tracks, I mean.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have any idea. I know that you can't swing a cat in Ocala without hitting a training center.
That's right, cat. Wow, that's nasty. That's mean.
I would never do that, but I'm just saying when you do Google it, it's amazing how many training tracks there are just in and around Ocala.
So is Florida Equine, is that the name of the magazine?
The Florida Horse Magazine. We have Florida Horse Magazine is the official publication of the Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association, and then we put out a daily that you've probably seen here around Ocala called Wire to Wire. And
yes.
You see that in the Kangaroos, and we disseminate 58 locations throughout Ocala, and that's a daily publication that comes out 5 days a week.
Do you know, just speaking for me, and I don't know how many people are in my boat here, but the fast racing horses is interesting. But I think some of the other horses that don't race, that are just pretty horses, it just, it is one of the beautiful things of living here. And for me personally, I have no judgment, I guess, on a horse. You're never going to win a race. It's a beautiful horse out in the pasture. It's just so lovely to see. And my favorite time is early in the morning, especially if there's a colt. Is that the right phrase? Colt or foal?
Yeah.
A young one. Kind of running around, and it's still foggy out there. That's the coolest thing to see.
Yes. Well, that is one of the nice things about Ocala is that there's so many disciplines of horses around here and different breeds. You have your warm bloods with your hits show that comes in every year. I mean, that's obviously a big deal. And with the thoroughbreds, when a lot of them retire from their racing careers, I mean, Ocala is a great place to be because there are so many other disciplines that these horses can jump right into, with different horse shows and other kinds of disciplines.
And we have another phone call. Well, we did have another phone call. If you call in, by the way, let me just say, if you've never called in and you don't know this, you don't hear anybody say hello. What happens is while our guests are speaking, I hit a button, and you'll be able to hear them on your phone, and then just kind of wait until I say, go ahead, you're on the air. But generally wait till there's a breath in here. And this show has done such a great job, Barbara, as far as, bringing people like me into this beautiful industry that I feel separated from or have felt separated from. You're kind of making it less of a separation. You've already made it real obvious that the horse farm owners welcome us to come and visit. That's cool. I never really knew that, except for maybe the few that advertise it. I never knew.
Yeah, one of the things that I would encourage people in Ocala, if you've never been out to a horse farm, there are tours. If you've never been to our office, I mean, we have a couple of Kentucky Derby trophies in our office. There's been 6 Florida breds that have won the Kentucky Derby. That's
where's your office?
Our office is right across the street from Ocala Airport and right next to.
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
Oh, this is this is the gold trophy that Mark was talking about.
Yes.
Oh, you've got the big gold. Oh, what do you have, armed guards there or something?
Hey, we heard Dave.
All right, we do have a phone call. Let me make sure I take that before we lose it. Good morning. Thank you for calling and for waiting. You're on the air.
Hi, I was just wondering about the recent races at Oxford Downs. I know they ran for one day. Do a lot of racetracks just typically have one race per year or one race day of racing per year, and do you expect them to have more in the future?
They were, that was their preview race that day. That was their opening day, from what I understand. And I believe that, yes, they are scheduled to do another venue of races sometime in early summer.
And I want to just point out that that's more of a sham operation down there. I mean, they're not recognized by the American Quarter Horse Association. They're not recognized by, they're not regulated by anybody. I don't know that they weigh the jockeys. The horses aren't registered with anybody. I'm sure
then why
they have.
Are they allowed to have a meet?
That they're allowed to have a meet because they met certain criteria outlined by the state of Florida, and most states will not let you run if you're not recognized by the Jockey Club or the American Quarter Horse Association or the harness registry. But that operation is.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you'll ever see a Kentucky Derby winner come out of Oxford Downs?
No, I don't think you'll ever see a good calf roping horse come out of Oxford Downs.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, fill me in on that one. So it sounds like you said it was a sham.
Yeah.
And where is this? Oxford Downs? Where is that?
It's in South Marion County, someplace over by the villages. Yeah. And what they've done is they've tried to get a license so they have a card club. So what they'll do, they'll put some horses out there, and it's like flag drop racing. I don't even think I guess maybe they have starting gates, but it started a couple of years ago, where somebody found a loophole in the Florida law and started having parimutuel barrel racing. And that finally, the courts threw that out, and by that time, these guys in South Marion County figured out another loophole, and they're running horses. But it's a very dangerous situation down there. They don't have any safety rails. I don't know if they have an ambulance. They're not recognized jockeys.
Is that where they play polo?
I don't know what they do.
Something different?
Yeah.
No, that's entirely different. The polo fields are in the villages itself,
Okay.
so that's an entirely different operation.
So, Brock, the way you're talking about it, you know what it reminds me of? I used to work with football guys, and they spoke with that same disdain about arena football. Is that in the same category for you?
No. I would say arena football is about much more legitimate than. I would say roller derby is more legitimate.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no! Oh no! So, but the average person, we wouldn't know. The average us, the rest of us, we don't really know these things.
No. It's kind of sad that somebody in Marion County would try to undermine the breeders and everything like that. But
I'm guessing you cover this now and then, at least in the magazine.
We have written about that, yeah. But one of the things that we're more excited about right now, we're kind of excited about the Preakness right now, and there's a Florida bred that was born and raised right here in Marion County, Pablo Del Monte, that's going to be in the Preakness, and we're pretty excited about him. I think he's got some pretty good chances, and so we're really looking forward to next Saturday and see how that works out.
So the money that is associated with horses, which is a big part of the those of us who know nothing about it, we have visitors to Ocala and we say, yeah, this is $1 million industry. Well, how do they make their money? And I guess the answer is always they sell the horses or they sell the stud service, right? Is that accurate? Yeah.
Yeah, both of them.
So, but it's not the racing itself, right? Or is it?
Well, for these people, the breeders, there's many ways for them to, make money. As you said, there are stallion farms here, and that's what they do. They'll sell the services of the stallion to the mares, and those can range in Florida anywhere from, there are less expensive and more expensive, but the norm is about $2,500 to I think upwards of about $10,000.
Wow.
There's stallions in Florida that charge that, and then there's people that just have the mares that take to the stallions and raise the horses, and they'll either sell them either privately or they'll sell them at Ocala breeder sales, or they might even keep them and race them themselves, and then try to earn additional income off of breeders awards, which we distribute here at the Florida Thoroughbred Breeders Association.
Are any of you three breeders?
Not currently.
Obviously, no.
No. Well, I didn't know. Not obvious to me.
No.
But owners? Are you owners? Do you own any horses? Any of you?
I don't own any horses right now. No.
Not even a sawhorse. No.
Maybe a rocking horse.
But you what?
Maybe a rocking horse.
A rocking horse. But your interest in horses comes from where then?
I grew up around horse racing. My dad trained quarter horses on the West Coast and
West Coast of the country or the state?
The country.
Oh, in California? Where?
California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and so I grew up on the racetrack. And then both Dave and I went to the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program, which is a program curriculum, a college curriculum for people that are interested in getting into the parimutuel wagering industry.
Okay, so that brings up a question. When there's a human athlete that has been training in an arid area and then has to play in a very humid area, it often is detrimental to their playing, and maybe in reverse too. Does the same thing happen for horses? Or altitude? Does altitude change their ability to run?
There's one thing that, in South Florida, the trainers are very aware of that, and even in all southern parts of the country, when you start racing in Texas in the summertime. And it's generally, horses can acclimate to almost any kind of temperature, especially cold temperatures and rain and snow. That doesn't bother them very much at all. They will get into trouble when it gets too hot, but on the racetrack, they're fed electrolytes, Gatorade. They get alcohol rubs before the races.
Because they sweat just like us, right?
Yeah, they sweat, and they have to sweat just like us. But if it goes from like a very moderate day, say 75 degrees to 90 degrees the next day, then you run into a lot of problems because the horses haven't had an opportunity to really acclimate.
So it's the temperature more than the humidity.
I think it's a combination, just like anything else. But if you get that big switch, sometimes it can adversely affect.
Because I would think Arizona, where it probably gets 100 degrees easy,
right,
would be still different for an athlete, a human athlete, than 100 degrees in 98% humidity.
No, absolutely. Sure. No, but I think the horses, adjust to that. Now, there are some horses or some tracks out on the West Coast, like Rio Dos, and they're, fairly high, almost a mile high. And I think horses are just like, human athletes will have a hard time adjusting to the altitude. Or if you ship from, say, Los Alamitos and Los Angeles to Denver, to race, the altitude will get to you.
How do you feel about handicappers? Do you like what they do? And we had a great relationship with one. I guess I won't name him, but he was always fun to talk to, and I would take his information, go down to the little place where you are. I won $12. I won $12. So I mean, I like them. Do you guys like handicappers?
Consider myself a handicapper.
You are a handicapper. Yeah. Okay, all right.
Dave is a pretty good handicapper. So I've done it professionally before. I think Dave, you probably mostly on a personal level. But yeah, I think it's one of the most important segments of the industry, are those people that bet that money.
Well, can I name the guy I'm talking about? Bernie Dickman. Do you know Bernie?
Yeah, we know Bernie. Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Yes. I haven't heard from him in a long time, but he used to handicap on the air, and I'd write down what he said and go over there, and I won $12.
There you go.
Well, maybe we can get Dave to give us his Preakness picks before the show is out.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Exactly.
That's kind of where I was going with that.
Oh boy.
Somebody want to do that? We'll write him down. Who do you pick? Do you pick the Florida bred?
Well, I was hoping for the Florida breds, definitely in the Derby. I was looking for a Wildcat Red, Dance with Fate. You never know how it's going to run. As far as the speed and the pace go. It looks like there's only going to be about 2 horses coming back from the Derby in the Preakness, California Chrome, and Right on Curlin. Sorry. And Pablo Del Monte, the Florida bred, I mean, he's kind of a wild card there because he's got 2 wins. They've been at the allowance level. He broke his maiden his first time out, and then he won allowance level. He ran in some great stakes down South Florida, and he was stakes placed. He was supposed to be in the Derby. He drew in. He scratched just because he was such an outside post. They said, you know what, we're going to skip the Derby, wait 2 weeks, and maybe go get a better shot in the Preakness. And everybody seems to feel that he's got a lot of speed, so he could possibly take on California Chrome. I think California Chrome, it was I don't want to say it was a soft trip, but it was slow. It was a slow Derby. It was a really slow pace, and he was able to reserve his energy till the very end. Now, would he have been able to run that well if it had been a faster pace and he had to run a little bit faster? So everybody's pointing at California Chrome and saying, okay, we think this guy could possibly take the Triple Crown this year. That's very possible. Whether or not he can run back in 2 weeks and be just as strong as he was in the Derby, that's another question. He's never run back that soon. I think he's had about 3 or 4 weeks in between the starts.
Oh, really?
So, that's the question. Can he's a really talented horse. He's very strong. But can he come back in that short amount of time and run that same race that he did last week? So, I don't see why not. But Pablo Del Monte, he's a wild card. And if you find, a good enough price on him, if the odds are high enough, he's worth a bet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right now it looks like he's the only Florida bred that's in the race. But, there's many horses in the race that have passed through Ocala at one time or another. There's a horse by the name of Ring Weekend that was received his early training at Krupe's Newcastle Farm. I think Right on Curlin was trained by Barry Eisenman during his early stages here in Ocala. Ocala horsemen will still be very well represented in the Preakness and probably in the Belmont too.
So is there a drink associated with the Preakness? We had the mint julep discussion. Somebody even sent me a mint julep recipe on a postcard.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, in fact, they sent it from Kentucky. They were at the Derby.
Really?
They heard us talking about it. Yeah, sure did.
Not much to it. It's crushed ice and bourbon and some simple syrup.
I thought I had it here.
Simple syrup.
So is there a drink? Is there a drink for the Preakness?
I think they have one that they try to market every once in a while. I think, when the sponsors change, the drink changes, so it really doesn't have the history of the mint julep. But I think there'll be plenty of drinking at Pimlico, especially in the infield.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Sure.
Oh, my God.
The official drink, they're more proud of their crab cakes than they are their drinks, but believe me, they'll be consuming.
All right, well, this is fascinating. Barbara Feitos, thank you for coming
Absolutely.
in. Brock Sheridan and Dave Allen, thank you guys for sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks for having us, Larry.
Their expertise and their wonderful opinions. And just as a disclaimer, obviously, our guests have their opinions and they are not necessarily endorsed or they're not necessarily the opinions of the Equine Alliance. So I just want to make sure because we remain neutral on those kinds of topics. So thank you.
We've got to push forward. Thank you. Thank you all of you. That was fun.
Thank you.
All right, we will take a little break and we'll be right back. This is The Source, WOCA Ocala.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Russian President Vladimir Putin in Crimea hailing what